It has been 1 year since those fires in the distance and the gunshots and mass rape, forcing hundreds of thousands of Rohingya to flee their homes in Myanmar. A new UN report calls it genocide. Hello and welcome to Plugged In. I'm Greta Van Susteren. And today, what is next for the Rohingya and how will the world hold those responsible accountable? August 25th marked 1 year since the Myanmar military began the unthinkable, burning villages and killing Rohingya men, women, and children. And this brutality came in response to attacks by Rohingya insurgents on police outposts, killing 12 Myanmar security officers. The UN calls the Myanmar military response to those attacks brutal and grossly disproportionate. The new UN report recommends Myanmar's top military official and several of his commanders be investigated and prosecuted for the crime of genocide. VOA United Nations correspondent Margaret Bashir has the details.
More than 700,000 Rohingya Muslims fled Myanmar's northern Rakhine state in the weeks and months following last August's brutal military crackdown. They arrived hungry and traumatized in neighboring Bangladesh, where they gave accounts of the atrocities they survived.
The scale, brutality, and systematic nature of rape and violence indicate that they are part of a deliberate strategy to intimidate, terrorize, or punish the civilian population. They are used as a tactic of war. The acts we found include rape, gang rape, sexual slavery, forced nudity, and mutilations.
The UN panel concluded that the Myanmar military's response to attacks by Rohingya militants, which killed a dozen security officers, was immediate, brutal, and grossly disproportionate, and was likely pre-planned. They say it was also the gravest of war crimes.
These have principally been committed by the military, the Tatmadaw.
The panel named 6 generals, including Myanmar's commander-in-chief, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing. Myanmar authorities have denied that such crimes took place. Myanmar's UN ambassador spoke with VOA before the report was issued about the crisis.
We have said before, and this is not ethnic cleansing, this is not genocide.
The fact-finding mission is calling for the UN Security Council to refer the situation to the International Criminal Court at The Hague. It is also urging international sanctions against the perpetrators and an arms embargo on Myanmar. The panel strongly criticized the United Nations for its failure to address human rights concerns and for not preventing or mitigating what it said was a catastrophe looming for decades. Aung San Suu Kyi was also criticized for not using her position as de facto head of government and her moral authority as a Nobel laureate and democracy activist to curb or prevent the crisis. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
Well, the UN report uses the word genocide. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, while addressing the Security Council recently, never uttered the word genocide. Guterres acknowledges a climate of fear still exists, preventing Rohingya refugees from returning to what's left of their lives and homes in Myanmar. He said Myanmar is not cooperating with any investigations, and he pressed the nations of the world to commit to a massive investment to help the Rohingya. As she has done before, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley used the words ethnic cleansing, but not genocide, when putting the blame squarely on the Myanmar and its military.
The numbers tell just part of the story. 82% of the refugees saw a killing. 82% saw their homes or their villages destroyed. 65% witnessed an abduction, arrest, or detention of a fellow Rohingya. 64% watched a family member or a fellow villager injured. And half of the Rohingya refugees, 51%, said they witnessed sexual violence.
Haley noted the U.S. has sanctioned 5 Myanmar military and border guard commanders and 2 Myanmar Army units. What can and what should the United States do? Dick Durbin is a U.S. Senator from Illinois, home to about 1,500 resettled Rohingya refugees. I asked Senator Durbin whether it matters that we call what happened to the Rohingya ethnic cleansing or genocide.
It should. I mean, that is a word that should not be used lightly. It should be used carefully. And it appears that there is no other conclusion we can reach from what happened to the Rohingya in Myanmar. There was a conscious effort to displace, murder, and rape these individuals. If it isn't a genocide, nothing qualifies.
Tell me, what's the status of sanctions, the possibility of them?
Well, unfortunately, under the rules of the Senate, any senator can slow down or stop a measure, and we have the opposition of the Republican Majority Leader, Senator McConnell, who doesn't want us to take specific action in this situation. I think he's wrong. We've appealed to him, but he has basically stopped us from enacting legislation.
Why? I mean, why would he stop this? Is it because he thinks you shouldn't tack that into a defense authorization bill, or does he think that the U.S. shouldn't impose sanctions? Does he give an explanation?
Well, there's always a good reason, and then there's a real reason for what a politician does. And whatever the procedural defense that's used by Senator McConnell, the real reason is he is close to Aung San Suu Kyi. He has said many positive things about her and met with her, and believes that any direct assault on the Burmese military will destabilize the Myanmar situation and put her back in danger again. So that's why we're doing little or nothing when it comes to the Rohingya.
Does Aung San Suu Kyi have the power over the Myanmar military? Does she have real authority?
I don't know the answer to that. I doubt it. I think that she has a position, a title, some authority within the country. She, of course, is no longer under house arrest, but her control over the Myanmar military, I think, is very limited, if at all.
Well, she doesn't mention the word Rohingya, which a lot of people in Myanmar do not say the word Rohingya. It's as though they are invisible and don't exist. She says that these are Muslim terrorists, and you say what?
I say that this is a situation I never imagined I would find in modern times, let alone the 21st century. When you visit this part of the country in Myanmar and people stop you in mid-sentence and say, don't use that word, there are no such thing as Rohingya people. They want to obliterate the identity of these people from any conversation or policy. Like Aung San Suu Kyi, they want them to be identified as some visiting Muslim group that needs to go back home, in their words. We know, in fact, that there's a rich and long history of the Rohingya in Myanmar.
Do you have any idea why in 1982, when they passed the law, the citizenship law, that they let many ethnic groups become citizens, but as for the Rohingya, no. They made them stateless and wanted them out of the country? It's
hard to really explain, because there were so many different tribal and ethnic identities that they recognized within their own country of Myanmar, but not the Rohingya. And to go and visit, as I did when I was in that country, in Sittwe, to go and visit an actual barbed wire concentration camp with Rohingya people, you shake your head and you think, how could they rationalize this? How can they say to these people, you are confined behind barbed wire, you don't have access to the outside world?
Aung San Suu Kyi got a medal from the U.S. Congress. I think it was in the year, it was originally authorized in about 2008. I think she got it about 2012, the Congressional Medal of Gold. Should that be rescinded?
Well, I can certainly tell you that the impression many of us had of her and her courage when she was confined by the Myanmar military has changed dramatically because of this Rohingya crisis. We expected more. We expected her to step up and at least speak out against this atrocity.
I don't see sanctions in this instance having a cost to the American taxpayer. I mean, I don't know what the downside is, and maybe you can explain what the downside, what people are saying to you when you propose sanctions. What's the downside?
Well, there's very little downside for a nation the size and a nation with the power of the United States when it comes to our economy or the daily lives of our people by imposing sanctions on a very small and relatively poor country. That's a fact. But doing nothing, ignoring it, is unacceptable. And I think by imposing sanctions and inviting other nations to join us, we are making an important statement about what we expect in a civilized society in the 21st century.
While about 5,000 Rohingya refugees have come to the United States in 2015, most of the Rohingya refugees have dispersed throughout Southeast Asia. Nearly 1 million have fled next door to Bangladesh, while almost 500,000, 500,000, remain in Myanmar. Saudi Arabia has also absorbed 500,000 Rohingya refugees. Myanmar state media quotes a government spokesperson rejecting the UN report accusing the country's military of genocide. Myanmar's ambassador to the United States, Uon Lin, joins me. Thank you for coming in, sir. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Thank you. Do you use the term, sir, Rohingya?
I do not use the term Rohingya because it will not be useful in addressing, in finding a solution to the issue.
Why is there so much back off to that. I mean, and let me back up. Said in 1982 there was a statute passed in Myanmar authorizing about 135 ethnic groups to become citizens of Myanmar.
Yes.
But excluded were the Rohingya. Why?
Because when you are living in a country, as if you want to be recognized as indigenous nationalities, you must also get the support and also are approved by all the 135 nationalities in that country. If a person or a group wishes to be recognized as someone, it must have a cultural background, historical background, and then a linguistic background. If the people wish to prove their identity, this can be done in step by step when they come back, when they have a time to express their positions.
The Rohingya say that they have lived in Rakhine State or in Myanmar for hundreds of years.
All right.
And that they were even there, you know, during the British rule before.
Yes.
In 1948 they were there. They
Yes.
occupied the
Yes.
land. And then suddenly it seems like, you know, mainly 1982 is that the majority thought, okay, you can't be citizens, but these 135 other ethnic groups can be.
I will tell you, we were under the British for more than 100 years. During the time of British, there was a population census in the Rakhine State. You can get this from the reference libraries and wherever that you wish to find. And there is no description of what you mentioned about Rohingya. They have mentioned very clearly that there are people in the Rakhine State who came from Chittagong province of Bangladesh. Now the Bangladesh, in the past it was part of the British India.
Do you dispute that some of the Rohingya, or maybe some all, have been living for generations in the Rakhine State? Do you dispute that?
I do not dispute, because they were the people who may have been living in the Rakhine State for many years, and they were living in a very peaceful, in harmony with all other communities in the Rakhine State.
Senator Dick Durbin has
Yes.
said that he's been to Myanmar. I've been there as well
Yes.
twice. He said that he has seen Rohingya behind barbed wire in Myanmar. Is that true?
This is what he mentioned must be the internally displaced persons camp. That is what we call IDP. This is one of the recommendations of the Dr. Kofi Annan's commission to close the IDPs in his final report.
Why haven't they been closed then? Why are these people being held behind barbed wire in Myanmar?
It is not, I don't know whether it is not behind the barbed wires, but these are the IDP camps following the communal violence in the past.
The UN report uses the
Yes.
term genocide. I take it you don't use that word.
Because the UN report, we do not recognize the UN report.
Why?
This is the report mandated by the United Nations Human Rights Commission. And we initially, from the beginning, we have rejected the fact-finding mission that is mandated by the United Nations Human Rights Commission. This is the commission which the United States have withdrew in June 2018, this year, where the representative of the United States clearly say that the motivation of the UN Human Rights Commission was political bias and not human rights.
I've been, as I said, I've been in Myanmar. I've also been in Bangladesh
Yes.
twice at the refugee camp. And there were refugees there who told me that they witnessed military shooting
Yes.
some of the Rohingya leaving, that there was rape. Rape was used as a weapon. I saw at least one child with a huge scar on his chest that I
Yes.
was told was from the military using a machete against the child. Do you deny these acts of violence against the Rohingya in the refugee camp?
Yes, Greta, these are the allegations. In order to address these allegations, to find the truth, we have formed the Independent Investigation Commission led by international personalities in very recently in July 30th.
So what do you think happened to the people that are dead?
There may be people who will stand at who will appear in the law of court, and we will give them a chance to appear in the court of law.
Are you in favor of Rohingya becoming citizens?
I do not say this Rohingya, but those who are entitled, those who are living in the Rakhine State, the Muslims who are living in the Rakhine State will have chance to become citizens. That is what we are doing.
Do you disagree with the UN report that says there's a disproportionate, and this was pre-planned, and it's war crimes, which is why between 700,000 and a million people?
I have already told you that we have rejected the UN fact-finding mission and the report.
Do you think it's false? Do you think it's false? I understand that you reject the whole project.
This is the UN body which the United States have withdrew in June 2018, very recently.
Is Aung San Suu Kyi, does she have power over the military under your system of government?
Under the present constitution, military has a special place in the constitution.
So she can't tell the military not to do something like don't.
She has already told this in several occasions that the operations of the military is she is not aware of the military operations. But I can tell you that military is doing what they should do and according to the code of conduct.
Does your heart bleed for these Rohingya who are fled the country and who their homes have been burned down, and many of them have been killed, and there's rape for whatever reason? Do you have sadness for them at all?
Of course, we feel deeply to all the people who have suffered because of the humanitarian issue and because of the terrorist attack.
There are two Reuters reporters who were arrested last December. We expect a verdict, I think, next week, September 3rd, whether they'll be detained or not. They claim that they met with some police officers, and the police officers handed them some documents. And when they left the restaurant, I think it was, is that they were then arrested for having these documents that the police hand them. They say that they're investigating mass graves, and that's why they're arrested. Do you believe there are mass graves in Myanmar rising out of this the Rohingya crisis?
I don't know about the mass grave, but the case that they exposed was the grave of 10 Muslims, where those who were responsible were already sentenced because of what they have done. And also, I must tell you that that is only about 10 Muslims, but there on another occasion there are hundreds of people, Hindu villagers who were killed by the terrorist group ASA.
Would you accompany me to Rakhine State and show me around?
I would like to.
Because I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it. Because I've not been able to get into the Rakhine State.
Sure. Anyway. I will recommend you to visit the Rakhine State. This is what we have been doing.
Sir, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Kerry Kennedy just recently went to the Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh. She is president of Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, named after her father. In her new book, Ripples of Hope, Kerry Kennedy shares memories of her father through conversations with others. Robert F. Kennedy was running for United States president when he was assassinated 50 years ago. Kerry Kennedy is with us via Skype from Hyannisport, Massachusetts. Nice to see you, Kerry.
Great to be on with you, Greta.
Kerry, you've been to this refugee camp, as I have too. Tell me what you learned.
Well, we were in the Cox's Bazar refugee camp. We spoke to over 30 refugees. We heard terrifying stories. One woman after the other talked about being raped by multiple members of the military, seeing babies thrown onto burning bonfires. We heard about police shooting children as they ran away. Just absolutely horrendous atrocities.
What,
and
what Aung San Suu Kyi, the state counselor of Myanmar, says is that she says, as said on occasion, that this was terrorism, and she points to a group called ARSA, which is a small group of people who attacked a police station or a couple outposts a year ago, which provoked this, as the UN says, a disproportionate response. What about ARSA? What about, is there terrorism there?
Let me just respond to that. There was an attack on a few outposts by people with knives. But let's just step back for a second and look at what the reality was. So starting in early 2017, the military went in and started training local Rakhine people in how to use military-style assault weapons. Then in about early July, they gave those weapons to the local Rakhine or Rakhine people. Then in early August, they told all of the UN and international aid organizations that they had to leave northern Rakhine State. So those people were providing food and health care, which now without the food and the health care, the Rohingya people were desperately weakened. Then the military went in and house by house went to Rohingya homes and took away knives and scissors and other sharp objects. Then, about a week before August 25th, they went back into the Rohingya villages and they took down all the fences around those villages and around people's homes so that they would have a clear line of sight to commit this massacre. Then, on August 25th, there were some attacks by ARSA people using knives on some police outposts. The response by the military was to send in over 11,000 troops and 900 police. This is not something. Now, this was totally pre-planned, and it's clear, according to the UN High Commissioner, according to the UN Commission, Special Commission, and the Special Rapporteur on Sexual Violence,
and hence
against humanity.
And hence the statement as well as disproportionate in what you and I both saw, the almost 1 million people living in the most unthinkable conditions. Carrie, always nice to see you.
Great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Joining me, Hena Zuberi, Outreach Director for the Burma Task Force, which advocates on behalf of the Rohingya, and Karim, a Rohingya from Myanmar. Karim is a refugee, having fled the violence back in 2012. Nice to see both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Karim, first to you. Why is it that the Myanmar military doesn't like the Rohingya? I mean, why this disproportionate response according to the UN report? What's the basis for this?
Well, it's hard to say is a discrimination. It's discrimination to the Rohingya people, and they're planning to drive out Rohingya from the country.
But they could have done that with for instance, the Karen. That's another group that's in. There are 135 plus ethnic groups in Myanmar. They could have, and I know that they have battled with the Karen Christians, but the focus has been on the Rohingya.
It's not only the Rohingya. There has been many ethnic groups like Kachin, Kayin. They also has been faced at the same situation as the Rohingya.
But not the magnitude. I mean, that's what's Hena. What's so stunning is the magnitude of this. And we hear the mass rape. We hear babies being ripped out of mothers' arms and thrown into fire pits. I've seen children wounded.
We feel like this is a saffron washing of this genocide. We feel like this is they want a Buddha state, and they're cleansing. This is what we hear from even the refugees, that they feel this way, that they're cleansing the country of Muslims, and then they'll aim their genocidal guns at the Kachins, because the same divisions that came after the Rohingyas in last August are now at the borders of Kachin, the Division 33 and Division 99.
Does Aung San Suu Kyi have the authority to tell the military to stop?
I don't know what authority she has. We hear that she's walled up in her little city and she hasn't been interacting with people. We also hear that she said that she celebrated when all these soldiers ended up on last August in Rakhine State. She celebrated them as people of peace. So where does she stand? We still don't understand where she stands, and we believe that she has the power, she has the world behind that, she had the world behind her, and she's really, really disappointed the world.
Kareem, I've been there twice, most recently during the monsoon season in the refugee camp, and the conditions are just indescribable. I mean, you never forget it when you've seen that. Do you have friends and family that are in any of these refugee camps?
Well, in the Rakhine State, I have relatives in the camps. And
is that the barbed wire one in Myanmar?
Yes, inside the concentration camp in Burma.
And they can't leave the concentration camp. They can't get out. And they can't. And the ones who are in Myanmar in the refugee camp, in Bangladesh won't give them work papers, and they can't leave those camps.
I have some friends in Balukhali camp too. When I was in the Burma, we are students together.
So is this going to solve, Kareem? Is this going to resolve?
Say again.
Is this going? What's going to happen? What's the end of this?
Well, the world community have to be step forward to find the solution for the Rohingya people, and Rohingya people can back home and safely. And of course, Rohingya people need the international protection for the Rohingya people.
I don't see, talking to the ambassador and even having been to both nations, I don't see, we only have 20 seconds left, I don't see that Myanmar is anxious to, or is willing to have the Rohingya come back.
They're not, and that's why we need to go back to what worked. Full sanctions worked before. This did not happen then, and we believe the United States needs to make full sanctions against the Burmese government. Well,
the world said never again in terms of ethnic cleansing and genocide, and of course we had Rwanda, and now we see this. Thank you both for joining me. Before we say goodbye, a few words about Senator John McCain. He died 3 days ago, shy of his 82nd birthday. John McCain spent the last 30 years as a United States Senator from the state of Arizona. He built a reputation as a political maverick, unafraid to dissent from his Republican Party doctrine when it conflicted with his sense of right and wrong. McCain ran for president twice, losing both times. During the 2008 general election, McCain refused, though, to join others in his party who questioned his opponent Barack Obama's citizenship. When a supporter called Obama an Arab during a campaign stop, McCain said, "No, ma'am, he's a decent family man, citizen, that I just happen to have disagreements with." McCain's most important achievement may be his reconciliation with those who tortured him. McCain was a Navy bomber pilot during the Vietnam War, and in 1967, he was shot down and captured by the North Vietnamese. McCain endured more than 5 years of torture and deprivation as a prisoner of war. Decades later, McCain returned to Vietnam and championed restoring ties between the United States and Vietnam. Senator McCain, he led and he healed. Thank you very much for joining us, and stay plugged in and follow me on Twitter @Greta, and we'll see you next week.